I grew up on a quiet, shady street in a Chicago suburb. I've always dreamt about recreating my childhood experiences in Minecraft. Welcome to Cedar Circle. Alright, so I said it before, I'll say it again. I love editing these videos because I always notice something that I missed, and I don't know how I could have possibly missed this this detail of my own childhood home, except that it was in the ceiling. So at some point in my childhood, my dad was really into music, meaning into his record player and into speakers. I think he liked music, but he wasn't a singer or a musician. But he had a really good record collection, and he had a record player here. And he actually took two giant plastic round, I don't know how many gallon, maybe 50 gallon, something like that. I don't know, garbage cans, and he used silicone gel and he built tops to the garbage cans that were speakers. And then, and everyone thought he was crazy to do this, he created two holes in our ceiling, and he went up in the attic and he put the garbage cans face down with the speakers facing down into our living room, and he basically made surround sound. There was no such thing as 5.1 or surround sound back then. There was stereo, and when you would sit on this couch, you know, you could tell that the two speakers were left and right, and literally he put them here. But he was the first one on our block to take big freestanding speakers that used to be here and I think here, and put them up into the ceiling in a homemade speakers. And yep, that was my dad. This is a bad sign. So yeah, when I saved the world in World Painter, somehow, oh no, this is a really bad sign. Oh no, what happened? Jeff's house melted. Oh no, please. Oh no. Oh, this really makes me mad. Jeff's house was melted. The back seems fine. Wow. Oh my gosh. My house seems fine. Oh. And we'll put a little oil stain in the garage. And I remembered that next to the piano, we had some framed newspaper clippings. One was a picture of me throwing a frisbee through a hoop on our elementary school Olympic days. And one was a newspaper clipping of me holding two snow cones at a fun fair. So we'll stick those up there. There we go. That looks a little more balanced. And another important thing I almost forgot are the telephone poles that were at the corners of the yard, and there would be wires going to each house and then strung along. So I'm going to have to add those in. And I started roughing in the neighbor directly to our left, which is the Arhantes' house. This is their garage, which I'm going to make one block deeper. And we have a telephone pole right here. Actually, we'll put it right there. No, it was right about there. And it was just a bit higher than the house, I think. Yeah, that looks about right. Excellent. Yeah, perfect. The Arhanteses had a rickety wooden fence. We'll actually put it here. That's about right. And now this fence came up to, like, I think I want to say my chest, at least in the memory I'm having now. And I used to run up, and I could hurdle this fence here and then run straight over to Jeff's house. Like when we were playing hide and seek tag in our yard and Jeff's yard, we kind of played throughout this whole boundary. And sometimes somebody would count back here. Sometimes somebody would count on Jeff's front porch, and everyone would hide. And then you'd run around, kind of making like a figure eight around the houses. And if you got back to glue before you were tagged, then you were safe. All right, so I think that's a pretty good scale version of the Arhandes' house and the Patterson's house. And I actually made the Patterson's house accessible, particularly their garage. We did spend a little bit of time with a kid named Brian. He was a bit younger than us, but he had G.I. Joes, and we had He-Man and Star Wars. And so as we kind of made that transition into the mid-'80s, we ended up playing with Brian to get access to his G.I. Joes, to be frank. He was, as I said, he was a little bit younger than us, so we didn't include him in everything that we did, but every once in a while we included him, and he was fine. He was a good kid. Pretty much every house in the neighborhood had kids of one age or other. Not all of them had kids. Some were a bit older than me, so they didn't all have kids that we would play with. But one of the other things about Brian's house is one time when his parents weren't home, we were goofing around in his garage. We were bouncing around a ball. I don't exactly remember what we were doing, but I ended up throwing the ball, and it broke this back window here. Now, as a kid, I was known as someone who broke a lot of things just because I was very hyperactive and a little bit probably too daring compared to what most kids, or most parents, I should say, wanted their kids to be exposed to. So I wasn't a bad kid. In fact, I almost never got into trouble. But when I did, it was certainly memorable, at least to me. And one of the other things that I got in trouble for at Brian's house was one day Brian's parents weren't home, and we asked Brian if he could go in his pool. So Jeff and I were in Brian's pool with some inner tubes, and it was a small round pool, just enough for a young kid or a working dad to come home and relax too. So Brian was in his house. He was doing homework or something. He couldn't come out, but just Jeff and I were in the pool. And we actually started making waves, we called it, which is we would be in our inner tubes and we'd start bobbing up and down, and we'd bob up and down, and we'd jump up, and then we'd pull down as hard as we can. We'd jump up, pull down, and eventually the waves were getting so high that the water was literally like slashing up the sides of the pool and splashing out. And by the time we were done, the water was like maybe knee deep in the pool. We had splashed so much water out of the pool that when his father came home, we actually got in a huge amount of trouble for wasting all of that water. And his dad had to refill the pool with water from the hose. And that obviously cost money, and his dad was not too happy. So we were never again allowed in the pool. And by the way, the other thing is, when Brian's parents weren't home and he was home alone, he wasn't allowed to have friends in the house. So we were never allowed to go into Brian's house when his parents weren't home. So, yep, just another instance of us getting up to no good as kids. All right, then we've got the Greenlee's house here, which was another yellow house. I think their garage was detached but close to the house, and I seem to remember they had a shed in the back. I don't think I was ever in their yard, but I do remember from the back of the Patterson's yards being closed in. And I've added some detail to the telephone poles, and I've added telephone poles back here, which looks, at least how I remember it or how my brain has altered the memory during this building process. And then I remembered that the McDonald house had a sunken back porch back here. So that is most of my neighborhood. And I kind of had the urge to work on the 3 big willow trees out in the field as well as the pond. Now this here is a drainage pipe which connects underground over to the creek over here. And I think that's the best looking block for a drainage pipe. I've got to put some more vines on the inside of these willow trees for them to kind of hang down from the back of these drippy leaves here. And it'll take a little while to grow, but that's fine. I'm going to be working on this for quite a while, aren't I? So let's just fill up the inside with vines. I don't necessarily want them to grow on the tree bark itself, but they're going to, just by the nature of the way that Minecraft vines work. So as you can imagine, in this big open field, the willow trees actually provided kind of a nice hiding spot. The leaves, I guess their leaves actually went pretty much all the way down to the ground. And what we used to do is we'd grab a bundle of the reeds, and we'd actually take a running start and we'd swing on them. We could actually swing pretty good, or we would tear down individual strands of the leaves to make, and then strip the leaves off and make whips like Indiana Jones. We used to play a lot of Indiana Jones when I was a kid out here by the willow trees. And one year, back here, this is all tall grass, which I need to add in the reeds around, the cattails and reeds around the pond. But one year we found a big, giant turtle, and I am not even kidding you when I say that it was probably at least a foot across. It was at least a foot across. It looked like a snapping turtle. That's way too big. I was going to make a little ode to a turtle in here, but yeah, and it was dead, and it was mostly decayed. We knew enough not to touch dead animals because they could have a lot of germs and stuff, but I really wanted to take that turtle shell and keep it as some kind of a cool souvenir thing. All right, I turned the random tick speed up because I wanted to see the willow trees burst into life, and that is exactly what I was hoping for. And then I've started decorating this area here. This is sort of a drainage pipe that comes from the sewers here and then leads off into these series of creeks. And one time we thought we were going to be really cool. We got some railroad ties that we put out here, and we pounded them into the ground, and then we built a fort of wood across the top, and we had like a mattress in there. And then all through here we had traps, meaning like pit traps with boards with nails in them, tripwire traps, all kind of stuff, really kind of nutty. But we put so many boards and nails into this fort, you could walk on the roof. I mean, it was so sturdy that I'm not even kidding. one day we were at school and we were looking out this way and we saw the park district trucks pull up and guys come out and start ripping our fort down, because obviously we shouldn't have built a fort over a sewer drain. It's probably not a great idea. And the guys actually had to pull out chainsaws to start sawing down our fort. We had put so many railroad ties and nails and dug that thing so far into the ground. And all of us watching from the schoolyard were just cheering as they were like trying to rip it apart by hand and not having success. And when they had to pull out those chainsaws, man, we thought we were the biggest heroes in the whole world, that we defeated the Park District guys by how ridiculously difficult we made it to break down our fort. It was quite a fun day and a lot of bragging thereafter.